In an ever-connected world, scientists are increasingly working together to solve the biggest issues facing societies today.
There's huge potential here.
From health to energy and sustainability.
You're talking massive climate impacts.
This week on 10 Things to Know About, we're learning about the humble insect, how some could give us a protein boost, and how we can prevent others from harming food production.
When I think of cricket, I think of hot summer evenings or Jiminy Cricket from Pinocchio. I certainly don't think of lunch. But up to a third of European consumers have said they're willing to try insect-based food. So might we see foods like this appear on Irish supermarket shelves in the future? Sustainable protein sources are needed to feed a growing global population, leading to a widespread interest in edible insects. The question is, will Irish people take to them like bees to honey?
Ooh!
We're a bit of a whiff out of it now.
They don't smell as bad as I thought they would.
I would think they're maggots, yes.
Try a mealworm now. Really? Okay, I'm gonna do it.
They're not great now.
Very nice.
I expected it to be salty or really earthy, but they were quite mild actually, and just really, really crunchy.
Yeah, there's a bit salty and there's a bit of a peppery taste in them, sort of.
Smoky bacon.
I could see myself sprinkling that on a salad.
They have to be a fairly good advertising campaign to make me actually buy that off the shop, like, to say what's the benefit of it for me.
Could be just a snack to have during the day, or I don't think we would, but someone else might.
I could see a couple of people eating it, but like for me, I don't think it would be normal.
To be a niche market.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised that I've put an insect in my mouth willingly and I enjoyed eating it.
I think the lads felt a bit antsy about eating them, but I think they're great grub. I'm meeting Carlos Alvarez Garcia, who's working on a Europe-wide project examining insects and insect protein in food.
As you know, the global population is increasing a lot. Proteins is an essential nutrient. It seems that the current production system is not sustainable anymore. We need to look for alternatives on how to provide these proteins to the growing population. So we're covering different aspects as why insects are more sustainable than other traditional protein sources. We're looking at how we can modify the nutritional value of our insects by changing their diet. We're also looking how to process the insects so we can check if it works better when incorporated in another product. And finally, we have a lot of collaboration with industries already operating in this arena. We provide knowledge and expertise, and we help them to do analysis, we help them to develop new products.
What sort of insect products are we talking about?
It depends on the industry. So some of them are looking to the whole insect, just dried, so you can get your whole cricket or your whole worm in a packet. Some others think that it's better to modify these insects to get the proteins out of them and make it like a flour. And some others are already creating new formulations, so we can have traditional products as burgers or sausages, granola, even some chocolate bars with insect proteins.
Insect sausages, how does that work?
Yeah, so what we do is we extract the proteins out of the insects, and then we replace part of the meat protein with insect protein.
Are insects much safer to eat because they're so different to us? Are they less likely to carry diseases that might affect humans?
When it comes to insects, we still need to do a lot of research on that. The European Food Safety Authority at the moment only have approved for insect species to be consumed in Europe, which is the migratoria locust, the cricket, the grasshoppers, and the mealworms. And even though for these 40 species approved, only a particular way of processing is approved. So there might be bacteria or pathogens that we don't know in the insects, so we need to do research on that. And another aspect for food safety is the allergens. Still, we need to investigate what type of allergens we might find when investigating into insects.
We know how to farm meat very well in this country, but do we know how to farm insects? Is it easy?
Well, it's not really complicated, but we need to find out what is the best diet for the insects to be a good source of proteins for ourselves. So for instance, we're trying different byproducts or co-products from the food industry that have no use at the moment for food. So we incorporate this into the diets of the insects and we see how that impacts on the final composition.
An agricultural research centre in Belgium is one of the international partners on the ValueSect project. Researcher Carl Coudron's role is to focus on the best way to breed insects.
We have millions of insects at the moment, but I think the adult animals, so the adult insects, we will have around 40 to 50,000 of them. Right here we see the adult stage of the yellow mealworm. It's a beetle, and now they are basically laying eggs to produce the next generation of the mealworms. The eggs, it takes around 4 to 18 days before it hatches. The larvae takes 8 to 10 weeks before it turns into a pupa, and so harvestable size. And then right here we see the intermediate phase between the yellow mealworm larvae and the beetle, which is the pupa, which we of course keep to replenish our adult population. Conditions you need to rear insects will depend heavily on the species. For example, the mealworm, we keep them at 27 degrees and 60% relative humidity. Ventilation is very important for the insects because they breathe, they are living animals, so they consume oxygen and they produce carbon dioxide. We once had a prototype being tested here, and the ventilation wasn't quite on point yet, and we had 30 kilograms of live larvae of the black soldier fly escaped on a Monday morning, typical Monday morning. Well, the advantage of insects over ordinary livestock is that they are more efficient with their feed. You need less feed to produce an equal amount of protein. You can keep them on any organic waste, basically, as long as their basic requirements are fulfilled. Then a second advantage is that they can be reared vertically. So we keep them in crates, and these crates can be stacked, of course. So we have a lot of production in a certain area. The insects, of course, produce some manure in the end, which can be, if we apply the correct processing steps on them, be used for soil enhancer in agriculture. I think we need to be more efficient with our waste streams. We are at the moment producing a lot of waste, and if we can valorize that waste again by feeding it to insects, then we have again a high value insect protein which can be used in the food chain again.
They're also investigating whether insects could be a more sustainable and cheaper food source for animals than fish meal, which is made from fish.
Usually fish feed contains a little bit of fish meal, which is wild-caught fish that they grind up in a protein powder. And in this trial, we try to replace some of that fish meal with the yellow mealworm protein. At the moment, we don't notice any differences between the control feed, which is the established feed on the market, and the experimental feeds, which is a good thing, that we can replace the fish meal with insect protein.
Once the insects have been harvested, they're sent to Chagask for further testing. I'm meeting Eduarda Neves, who's been analysing the nutritional value of those insects and of food products containing insect powder.
At the moment, we are testing protein composition analysis in mealworms that includes fat levels, ash, moisture, protein, and carbohydrates.
You mentioned ash. What is ash?
So to test these products in particular, we burn them. We tested for ash to understand which part is non-digestible in our products.
How do you test for fat in food products?
We usually weigh the samples in paper pads. Then we put them in the oven overnight to remove all the moisture, so we have accurate results. After that, we roll them in a proper plastic frame. We heat them up to 40 degrees, and then we just insert in NMR machine. This NMR machine itself, it isolates completely the protons of the fats, so we just know exactly which fat we have in our products.
The insects have been fed organic waste, like shelled oats and potato peelings.
However, the team has also explored giving insects red blood cells as part of their diet to see whether this could increase their nutritional content.
We found out that when we replaced 20% of the control meal by 20% of red cells, we found out that they accumulate more fats, which indicates us that the metabolism of them is working better.
You're also testing products that are hitting food shelves. Tell me a little bit about that work.
We are screening 15 products from the market that are all food grades, like, for example, chocolate with mealworms, dried mealworms, or these little crackers with the cricket powder, or, for example, this cricket powder. We test them already for 2 points of storage, the initial and after 2 months of storage. I'm testing for all type of bacteria that we can find in food and feed. So far, we are finding from all the results that we are getting, they are very promising products. They have a high level in protein and they perform very well on the shelf.
Most of the world eats insects, right? But in Ireland, it's not something we're particularly used to. Are Irish people ready to eat insects, do you think?
Well, we did some surveys in the past, and we saw that around 30% of the population is willing to eat insects. We saw as well that the young people are more adventurous when trying new foods. So we believe that in the future, this young generation will become the consumers, will become the ones going to the market.
It's not the Irish mammy you're aiming towards, it's more the soy latte hipster.
Well, not really the hipster, but maybe the people who is more conscious about the environment, about sustainability.
It's the American Civil War. A soldier lies wounded behind the battle lines. Limping for days, his battered leg turns from red to yellow to black. The rot sets in. Maggots arrive. The soldier moans, but the field doctor is ecstatic. At the time, modern medicine was in its infancy, but the wound-cleaning powers of maggots had been known since antiquity. Having a sophisticated set of tools for eating dying human flesh, maggots ooze digestive enzymes and antimicrobials to dissolve decaying tissue and kill off any unwanted pathogens or bacteria. Lacking teeth, maggots use rough patches on their exterior and squeamishly named mouth hooks to scrape off dead tissue before eating it. With numerous instances of maggot therapy having saved many a soldier's leg, its use continued through the Napoleonic Wars and into World War I. But the discovery of penicillin in 1928 and the mass production of antibiotics led to the end of the golden age of maggots. For decades, the therapy was confined to medical backwaters until a modern maggot renaissance took hold in recent times. With both ulcers and antimicrobial resistance on the rise, medics have created ingenious ways to allow maggots to help the sick by reducing the ick. Maggot biobags are thin enough to allow larval secretions to pass through to the wound, but crucially keep the grubs themselves out of sight and hopefully out of mind. Turns out that these small insects have taken us back to the future of healthcare. See you next time.
Insects like hoverflies and ladybirds are farmers' best friends, pollinating and preying on insects. Unfortunately, not all insects are helpful, and some, like aphids, can infect crops with viruses, leading to poor crop production. Milder weather can provide more favourable conditions for pests to reproduce and spread disease. Louise McNamara is studying cereal aphids that can damage crops like winter barley by feeding and spreading viruses. Louise, tell me, what is Barley Yellow Dwarf Virus and how does it affect crops?
Barley Yellow Dwarf Virus is a virus spread by aphids. When the aphids feed on the crop, that's how they transmit virus into it. So when their mouth parts enter the plant, it introduces virus, and the virus affects the photosynthesis of the plant. It causes it to be stunted with severe infection. It can actually cause up to 80% crop loss for the farmers.
Wow, so it's a big deal.
So it's the most serious pest of cereal crops.
And traditionally, farmers would just spray insecticide.
Yeah, so we have a target to reduce pesticide uses by 50%, and we look at things like planting day to see if when you plant, you may not need an insecticide or you may need less insecticides. Depending on when the farmer plants the crop, if they plant it early in the winter, they may have more Barley Yellow Dwarf virus because aphids reproduce and move based on temperature. There's over 25 different aphids that actually spread this virus, and there's over 11 strains of the virus. There's many different aphids. Some spread completely different viruses that infect different crops. So when a farmer sees an aphid in the field, he doesn't or she doesn't know if it's actually generating risk for the crop.
Grain aphids carrying BYDV can spell disaster for tillage farmers like Bobby Miller.
Aphids are everywhere, basically. They're in grass crops, they're in tillage crops. Most of the time they don't do any damage, but when you're dealing with making a living from it, they're there. This is my first year to be affected by winter barley with the aphids. I planted the crop last October, and I have to decide whether I spray an insecticide onto the crop to try and reduce the aphid numbers. And you have to decide within a space of 3 or 4 days whether you go spray that crop or not. At the end of the day, and that's where we are as farmers trying to deal with nature.
And you decided not to, and then you had a yield penalty at the end of it.
Well, I had 40 acres of winter barley this year. My yield compared to the year before was down 20 to 25% as a result of being attacked by aphids. And for me, that's a loss of income of €8,000.
That's a really tough decision. I won't spend €400 spraying insecticide, but I'm going to possibly risk losing 8,000 at the end of the year.
That's just my own farm.
Bobby has already harvested his winter barley, so I can see the effect of BYDV on the grain.
Yeah, you see the nice plump grains in the sample here in our hand, and then you see the skinny ones. The skinny ones, after being affected by what's BYDV. The BYDV causes the plant to go yellow, the leaves go yellow. Therefore there's less photosynthesis going on, and therefore the grain is smaller.
So it just doesn't develop as much as it should do.
Yeah.
And it's so apparent, like you can see it very clearly, the little skinny white, small little things versus the nice juicy plump looking ones.
Yeah, my grain mightn't pass for a premium product, and therefore that's another impact on my bottom line, less profit because I don't get the premium price for the grain.
You can't treat Barley Yellow Dwarf virus once it's in the field. So once BYDV is in the field, you can't do anything about it. So it's all about preventing it getting into the field.
The EU are aiming to halve the use of pesticides by 2030 due to the concerns about the impact on the environment and on human health. To help monitor the prevalence of aphids and therefore the risk to crops, Teagasc have set up suction towers that hoover in insects flying overhead. Why are you sucking them out of the sky at such high levels when it's, they're affecting crops kind of at a ground level?
We look at them at that height, so at 12.2 metres, to see long distance movement. If you can use 3 of these suction towers, so we have one in Carlow, one in Cork and one in Dublin, and predict for farmers within those areas, that saves them having tools all over the country for monitoring for aphids.
So are you kind of envisaging like an aphid forecasting tool?
Yes, we want to develop tools for farmers to be able to predict if their crop is at risk, so they're only treating the crops when they really need to.
And part of those tools is to kind of understand the aphid better, and this is where this all comes into play.
Yeah, so if you want to tackle any pest or disease, you have to understand what you're working with.
Prolonged use of pesticides means that some aphids have gained resistance to them. Maximilian Schugart has been studying how grain aphids reproduce and the impact of pesticide resistance.
They don't lay eggs, they lay live nymphs, we call them, that nymph is already pregnant with the next generation. You can imagine it like Russian dolls, for example. One aphid already has their daughter and the granddaughter inside them. There's 3 generations within one aphid. So that's really good for us because I have one aphid, 10 generations later, it's still the same. It's clones, it's identical clones. There's many different lineages of aphids. One of those lineages, there was a mutation, and that mutation made it resistant to insecticides. What I'm trying to do is to understand how dangerous this new insecticide-resistant aphid is.
How do you go about that?
I went to 50 fields all over Ireland, winter barley fields, and I collected live aphids. I test them for resistance and I test them for the presence of virus. We recently sequenced the genome, and now I want to find out more about the mechanisms behind the resistance and how efficient an aphid can transmit the viruses.
In order to test whether BYDV can manipulate aphids, Max has set up a series of trials. So what are the Aphid Olympics?
All right, we put an aphid that is healthy we have a kind of arena, and we put it in the middle of the arena, and we basically measure how fast it moves within the arena. And then we compare healthy aphids versus virus-infected aphids. If the virus can efficiently manipulate an aphid, the virus has a huge benefit of that because the virus will spread further if the aphids move further, or if they produce more offspring, or if they move faster.
How do you measure its reproductive qualities?
For example, we have plants here, single plants, and we just put the aphid on here and let it...
Just one?
Just one.
Yeah.
And then we just wait and let them reproduce nymphs. And after a certain amount of time, we just count how many aphids they have produced. And again, in theory, those aphids that we put on here that are infected with the virus should produce more offspring.
So like this one, I can even see it from here, has been very busy over 3 weeks, is it? Yeah. Wow, look at all that from one aphid. Yeah. Amazing. Gold medal for this guy, possibly.
Definitely.
We're learning every day as farmers, and we have to learn and we want to learn. We're all fully aware of climate change now. Like if the temperatures do remain mild, we get milder conditions over the winter and less rain over the winter, that means aphids are going to be more ideal conditions for them going forward. The more you learn about the aphid, the more ammunition you have to reduce their impact on your farm.